On March 26, 1998, Tristan Brubach's body was found inside a tunnel in the city of Frankfurt, Germany. Upon being notified, the police quickly arrived at the scene and came across a scene that was described as one of the worst they had ever seen. In the following days, a huge investigation and search for the person responsible for the crime was carried out, and the case became known as one of the most shocking and mysterious in all of Germany. Hey everyone, how are all of you doing? Welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in today's video I will discuss one of the most astonishing and enigmatic cases in the entire country of Germany. So, without any more delay, let's dive into the video. Tristan Brubach was born on October 3, 1984 in Frankfurt, a city located in the state of Hesse in Germany, with a population of just over 750,000 inhabitants. He was the only child of the couple who, according to sources, planned to have other children, but for unknown reasons they did not. Tristan has spent his entire life living in Frankfurt. He attended Walter Kohl Primary School, located in the Hux neighborhood, and after completing the 5th grade, he transferred to another school located in a neighboring neighborhood. Tristan's parents worked as salespeople in a store in town. It is said that the family had plans to move, but those plans changed after a tragedy happened. Iris, Tristan's mother, who was addicted to alcohol and drugs, took her own life in 1995, when Tristan was just 10 years old. This fact would have greatly shaken the boy, and also his father. After this tragedy, Tristan and his father continued to live in Frankfurt, and shortly after, Tristan's paternal grandmother moved in with them. As Baron was now a single father, he had to work twice as hard to pay the bills and support his family. Therefore, he was away for many hours, and needed someone to help him organize the house and take care of Tristan, which is why he asked his mother to move in with them. Tristan's grandmother started to help organize the house and take care of the boy in the later days, but despite his young age, the boy was already quite independent. He used to walk around the neighborhood alone in the afternoon and at night, although the neighborhood he lived in was considered a bit dangerous. Furthermore, he learned to use public transport to get around the city whenever he needed to. At home, Tristan was extremely reserved. He usually spent hours playing video games and also playing with his pet rabbit named Hoppelfried. The boy loved animals and was known for petting every animal he found on the street. As a preteen, Tristan was seen by his neighbors as a very independent boy. It is said that he even started smoking just to look older and be accepted by the older kids in the neighborhood. However, this didn't save him from being bullied and attacked by other kids in the neighborhood who, for no reason, didn't like him. Despite all of Tristan's efforts to appear more mature, he was known for being a calm kid, something the other kids in the neighborhood saw as a weakness. On March 26, 1998, the last day of school before the Easter holiday, Tristan woke up around 8 o'clock in the morning. Instead of getting ready right away to go to school, Tristan procrastinated for a few minutes before calling his father. Brandy, the father of Tristan, had departed for work at around 4:30 in the early morning. During the phone call, Tristan asked his father if he could skip school to go to the doctor, explaining that he had hurt his back the day before and needed medical attention. The boy's father, thinking he was making an excuse just to skip school, told him to go to class, and later he would see if he needed to take him to the doctor or not. Tristan, even though he didn't want to, went to school, but he was stalling the whole way. While heading to school, he met a friend, a boy named Boris. The two spent most of the first period of class smoking outside of school. When they finally decided to go to class around 9 a.m., the second period of class was about to start. Tristan attended all subsequent classes normally. Only after lunch he informed the teacher that he had strong back pain and asked to leave early so he could go to the doctor. The teacher let Tristan leave early, but questioned him about why his back was hurting. The boy simply said he had fallen from a tree the day before while playing with some friends. However, a friend of Tristan would later state that he and Tristan were engaged in a game known as Stone Fight, where they threw stones at each other. This friend claimed that this was the cause of Tristan's back injury. Tristan left his school around 1:30 in the afternoon. He then went to the bus stop where he boarded a bus, sitting in the back seat as he usually did. When the bus stopped, Tristan got off and walked to a nearby train station called Frankfurt Höchst. The Frankfurt Höchst train station is located just a few blocks from the River Main and is one of the largest and busiest train stations in all of Frankfurt. The place is usually full of people who pass by on their way to work or school every day. At around 1:46 p.m., about 16 minutes after leaving school, Tristan was filmed by security cameras at a store inside the train station. In the images you can see that there is a man standing next to him. However, because the quality of the images is not very good, it is not possible to describe the man, much less know if there is an interaction between him and Tristan, or if the two are just standing next to each other. Some students from the same school as Tristan, who had left class at normal time, said they saw the boy at the station around 2:30 p.m. During the investigation, police spoke to these students, but they were unable to provide much information beyond this. One of them even told authorities that Tristan was alone and could be waiting for someone, but he wasn't sure. At around 3:20 p.m., a woman who was walking her dog in a park claimed to have found Tristan. This park is just a few blocks from the Frankfurt Höchst train station, and this woman claimed that Tristan was sitting on a park bench smoking a cigarette when she walked by with her dog. According to this woman, Tristan struck up a conversation with her and seemed to be a calm and friendly young man. Tristan told her he loved animals and petted her dog a few times before she continued on her way. The woman told authorities that there were two older-looking men sitting on either side of Tristan. She also said that they both appeared to be foreigners. This would be the last time Tristan Brubach would be seen alive. After 2 hours at 5:10 p.m., police received a call from teachers at a local school. Police were informed that the body of a boy, who did not appear to be older than 15, had been found inside a tunnel near Höchst train station. This tunnel is located on the outskirts of Höchst, a neighborhood in the city of Frankfurt. It was nicknamed by locals the Liederbach Tunnel. The tunnel is a small exit under a train viaduct. There is a walkway that passes through it, with almost no lighting and located near the exit of a river. The place is completely scary and looks like a horror movie set. Despite the tunnel's haunting reputation, it was a great shortcut for anyone wanting to get to the other side. However, after the event I am narrating, the tunnel was closed, and as far as we know, it remains that way to this day. As I mentioned, the tunnel was a great shortcut for anyone wanting to get to the other side, and that's how the body was found. A small group of boys were traversing the tunnel on their way to a school, and while they were inside the tunnel they caught sight of the body. They then ran and told their teachers what they had seen. The teachers at first didn't believe them, and decided to go to the tunnel to see if they were telling the truth. Upon entering the tunnel, the teachers saw that there was indeed a boy's body there, and immediately called the police. There were visible marks of violent aggression on the body, something that the teachers themselves were able to see before the police arrived. Police would later describe the crime scene as one of the worst ever discovered in Frankfurt. At first, the police were unable to officially identify the body. They saw that one of the victim's clothes had a tag with the name Tristan Brubach, and it was through that name that they got their first clue. Police determined that Tristan had been badly beaten and then suffocated. This would have happened outside the tunnel, and then he was dragged inside. One of Tristan's shoes had fallen off when he was attacked, and then the criminal or criminals placed that shoe on the boy's body. According to the police, after being attacked, suffocated, and dragged into the tunnel, Tristan had his throat cut. The cut went from ear to ear and was so deep that it reached the spine. Not happy, the criminal or criminals dealt numerous blows to the boy's body with a sharp object with a blade, probably a knife. But the worst was yet to be discovered. When examining Tristan's body, the police found that his testicles had been torn off along with part of his thigh. These body parts were not found at the scene, so the police assumed that the criminal took them. Police were unable to find Tristan's backpack, so it was theorized that the criminal took it as well. Tristan's body was placed in the tunnel in a position that looked like he was sleeping. It is not known exactly how long he was there before being found. The news about this terrible crime spread quickly throughout the city, and then throughout the country. It was featured in most newspapers at the time, which wrote numerous articles about it. Crimes of this type were rare in the Frankfurt region, something that made the case even more resonant. Tristan's father and grandmother suffered greatly from his loss. Bernd Brubach never recovered from the loss of his only son. His wife Iris had taken her own life 3 years earlier, and now his only son has been brutally taken away. While the family prepared Tristan's funeral, investigations into who was responsible for the crime continued. For the police, the crime was committed in approximately 15 minutes, due to all the evidence they collected. Furthermore, the criminal had to be quick, before someone appeared on the scene. Police also believed that the perpetrator had left the crime scene and then returned, probably to retrieve Tristan's shoes that had fallen outside the tunnel when the boy was attacked. In other words, after committing the crime, taking Tristan's life, the criminal went to the outside of the tunnel where he took the victim's shoes and then placed those shoes on top of the boy's body, leaving afterwards. Outside the tunnel, evidence of a fight between Tristan and the perpetrator of the crime was found. This indicated that the boy resisted a lot and fought for his life. Police later announced that they found a bloody fingerprint at the crime scene that likely belonged to the criminal. Over the next few months, this was the main evidence used to try to solve the case. Later, the police began to collect statements from people in the region to find out if anyone had seen or knew anything. During this collection of testimonies, the police officers spoke with 3 boys who shared something of great value. They mentioned that they were heading towards a soccer field that was close by. At around 3:30 in the afternoon, they intended to use a shortcut through the tunnel where Tristan's body was discovered. Nonetheless, they stated that while they were getting closer to the tunnel, they spotted an unfamiliar man in front of the entrance. They observed this individual for approximately 2 minutes without him noticing their presence. As per the boys, the man was hunched over an object. The police believed that the man was stooped over Tristan's body, and these boys had observed the crime without realizing it. After observing the man for approximately 2 minutes, as I mentioned previously, the boys, who were frightened, made the decision to take the lengthier route to the soccer field. They subsequently went around the tunnel. During their statements to the police, the boys were able to provide a short description of the man. This helped authorities create a sketch of the suspect. Their testimony also helped authorities establish a timeline. The police officers theorized that the crime occurred around 3:30 in the afternoon. This was just a few minutes after the woman walking her dog in a nearby park had contact with Tristan. Later, a young woman who lives in the region told police that she saw a strange man coming out of the tunnel at around the same time the crime occurred. The physical description she gave of the man to the police matched the same description given by the boys who were heading to the football field. Later, the police managed to improve the sketch, making it more faithful to the descriptions given by witnesses. In this way, they were able to create a digital version of the suspect's sketch that was widely circulated. According to the witnesses' descriptions and the drawing, the suspect was 1.70 meters tall, thin, had long blonde hair that appeared disheveled and with some braided strands. His eyes were light, possibly blue, and his skin was very fair. According to witnesses who saw him, his clothes looked dirty, as if he hadn't showered in a long time. Additionally, he was wearing a baseball cap-like cap, and had what appeared to be a cleft lip just below his left nostril. Witnesses said if it wasn't a cleft lip, it was probably a big scar. Using all the information about the suspect that they could gather, authorities put together a potential profile of him. According to this profile created by German authorities, the suspect was between 25 and 35 years old. He was probably someone who was socially reclusive, with no close friends or family. He liked to hurt people who had the same profile as Tristan, that is, minors. This would be because of some resentment, or simply for pleasure. The police would use this profile that they created themselves to help with their investigations in the following months. Tristan Brubach's funeral took place on April 6, 1998, 11 days after the crime. He was buried in the Frankfurt Höchst Cemetery. The priest who conducted the entire farewell ceremony and who had previously met Tristan at an Easter holiday retreat reportedly said, "Nothing could be more brutal." A large white cross with a photo of Tristan was placed on top of the tomb, with a large stone heart in front of it. The engraving did not say deceased as is usual, but rather murdered in 1998. This was a request from Tristan's own grandmother. While Tristan's family members were in mourning, German authorities were trying to understand the reasons behind this heinous crime. Several questions were raised. Why was Tristan targeted by the criminal? Was it random or a deliberate choice? Why did the criminal cut parts of the boy and take them with him? The day after Tristan was buried on April 7, 1998, a man called the Frankfurt police and said he was responsible for the crime. This man called from a payphone at Höchst train station, the same train station that Tristan Brubach had visited hours before he fell victim to the crime. Sorry? It's Martha. It's Mother. Jimty? Ja. Will die wonderste stellen naar wat? Ja. Ja. Wo stimmt ihr denn jetzt? Frankfurt, Frankfurt Höchst. Ja, wo soll das? Bahnhof. Am Bahnhof. Ab umgebracht. Dort, sie haben ihn umgebracht, ja. Wie sehen sie denn aus? Wie groß? Erwachsen. 1,80 Haare. Schwarze Haare. Lange oder kurz? Lange Haare. Thin in the shirts. On the call, as you guys could read, the man confesses to have taken Tristan's life. He says he wants to turn himself into the police and that he's calling from the Frankfurt Rost train station. When questioned by the police officer about his appearance, he provides a description of himself, stating that he is approximately 6 feet tall and has long black hair. The man then concludes the call by saying, "Arrest me." The police officers promptly proceeded to the train station, but upon arrival they were unable to locate the individual who placed the call. It is not public knowledge whether they obtained anything that could identify who made the call, such as security camera footage or even fingerprints that were on the phone that was used for the call. Some newspapers published articles at the time with the theory that this phone call was actually made by the person responsible for the crime, but with the clear intention of misleading the authorities. This is because witnesses who saw the man in the tunnel at the time of the crime told authorities that he was blonde and about 1.70 tall. The man on the phone said he was 1.80 tall and his hair was long and black. As a result, some people, including journalists, believed that whoever made this call had the clear intention of confusing the authorities. Some people also said that the man who called the police seemed to be under the influence of some substance, as his voice sounded a bit faltering and his words slurred. Perhaps this was intentional on the part of the person who made the call, as they did not want their voice to be recognized, since they knew this call would be made public. The mobilization to find the person responsible for the crime against Tristan Brubach was, at the time, one of the biggest investigations in all of Germany. More than 10,000 men in the region where the crime occurred had their fingerprints checked. Most of these men were between 15 and 45 years old. Almost all men who were residents of the Höchst neighborhood in Frankfurt, excluding those over the age of 45, had their fingerprints taken. More than 24,000 statements and witness statements were collected by the police. Authorities also sent a sketch of the suspect to more than 80 prisons in Germany in the hope that an employee or even an inmate would recognize him. But even with all this mobilization and effort, German authorities were having great difficulty finding a solid lead that would lead them to the suspect. The police went to several hospitals and clinics in the region in the hope that they would have a record of a man with a cleft lip or a noticeable scar on part of the lip. Unfortunately, this search did not bear fruit. All the evidence collected by the police officers throughout the investigations was very well kept, especially the blood fingerprint that was found at the crime scene. Although DNA technology was not yet as advanced as it is today, authorities knew that the criminal's DNA could lead them to him sooner or later. All this collected evidence was shared with other security and investigative agencies, such as the German Federal Police, Interpol, and even the Behavioral Analysis Unit, which is a unit linked to the FBI. But even so, nothing new emerged that could lead the authorities to reach the person responsible for the crime. In March 1999, practically a year after the crime, Tristan's backpack was found in a forest about 16 miles away from the crime scene. Inside the backpack, police found a road map of Germany, which had been printed in Czech. As Tristan did not speak, much less understand Czech, the police concluded that the map did not belong to him and probably belonged to the person responsible for the crime. As soon as this information reached the media and was released by them, a witness came forward. According to this witness, at the time of the crime, she was hiking through the forest where Tristan's backpack was found. The witness said that not far from where the backpack was, there was a man she described as very strange. According to the witness, the man was mentally unstable and spoke bizarre things, such as his enlistment in the French Foreign Legion and a flock of sheep he had lost track of. Furthermore, according to the witness, the man reportedly mentioned that he had recently come from the Czech Republic to Germany. When they finished taking all the testimony from this witness, the police were almost certain that this was the man they had been after for more than a year, and the case would finally be closed. However, when German authorities contacted French authorities, they discovered that this man had already been identified. According to the French authorities, the man was a legionnaire who, on the date the crime occurred, was on military service for the Legion, therefore he could not be responsible for the crime. Furthermore, French authorities presented medical documents that proved that the man was indeed on military service. With that, the police backed down and went back to square one in their search for the criminal. In October 1999, Tristan's grandmother went to visit his grave and came across a pitiful scene. The boy's grave had been desecrated by some vandal who dug it, but was unable to reach the coffin, leaving the grave open and exposed. It is unknown when this occurred, and how long Tristan's grave remained like this. The police carried out a brief investigation at the time, but were unable to reach the person responsible for this profanity. As time passed and answers about Tristan's case did not emerge, countless theories created by the population began to gain ground. Most of them were based on gossip and innuendo. One of the most popular theories was that Tristan was involved with gangs and selling illicit substances. Many said that perhaps he had gotten involved in something he shouldn't have done, and that's why he ended up being the victim of a crime. However, during investigations, police found no evidence that the boy was involved in any criminal activity. Another theory that became popular was that Tristan dated older men in exchange for money. This theory, like the other, was also refuted by the police as no evidence of this was found. As I said earlier, these theories were based on gossip and innuendo. Later, a woman living in the United States contacted German authorities and said she was almost certain who was responsible for the crime. For months, this woman maintained contact with the German authorities, providing tips and information about the alleged criminal. However, during investigations, it was discovered that the alleged criminal was actually the woman's ex-boyfriend, and he had nothing to do with the crime. The woman simply wanted to frame him for revenge by lying to German authorities for several months. In the end, the woman was fined for giving false testimony. Some journalists who were focused on unsolved crimes wrote some reports in which the theory was raised that Tristan's case was linked to two cases of disappearances in the region, the case of Annika Seidel and the case of Melanie Frank. Annika Seidel was an 11-year-old girl who disappeared in Kelkheim in September 1996, around 10 kilometers from where Tristan was the victim of the crime. She was never found, but a witness claimed to have seen her standing near a vehicle with Eastern European license plates. Melanie Frank was a 13-year-old girl who disappeared from the suburb of Wiesbaden in June 1999. This was more than a year after the crime against Tristan, and about 35 kilometers away from where he was found. On that occasion, Melanie went to a local store to buy cigarettes for her mother. Some witnesses said they saw her outside the store waiting for someone, and after that she was never seen again. Melanie Frank's body was found in 2008, while Annika Seidel was never found. Even though the theory raised by journalists that the case of Melanie and Annika being linked to Tristan's case made some sense, it ultimately proved to be of little use for the police. This is because both cases, just like Tristan's, were also left unresolved and unsolved, and thus they also didn't have a concrete lead on who was responsible for the crimes. In 2013, German authorities announced that they had collected new clues and hoped that this would open a new line of investigation that would lead them to the criminal. However, a few months after this announcement, the investigations ceased, as no major progress was made. 3 years later, in 2016, German authorities made a new announcement. This time they said they had a potential suspect. It was Manfred Seele, a German serial criminal. Manfred Adolf Seele was born in 1946 in Greater Hesse, a former German territory that was administered by the United States in the post-war period, and which today became the German state of Hesse. In 1967 he met his future wife, and in the same year he enlisted in the German army. He served in the army for 2 years. After leaving the military in 1969, he began working in a nursing home, and there he claimed his first 2 victims. The total number of victims that Manfred claimed is not known for certain, but German authorities estimate that there were more than 10 between the years 1971 and 2004. Manfred passed away in 2014 at the age of 67 due to esophageal cancer. He lived his life quietly without arousing suspicion. He was only discovered because a few weeks after his death, his daughter found human remains inside a warehouse that had been rented in his name for several years. After that, the German police began to investigate and ended up discovering that Manfred Seele was the serial criminal they had been looking for decades, known as the Hessian Ripper. The way Manfred attacked his victims and then cut off parts of them to take as trophies caused the German police to raise the theory that perhaps Manfred could be responsible for the crime against Tristan Brubach. However, after months of investigation into Manfred Seele's profile, German authorities concluded that he was not responsible for the crime that killed the boy. According to authorities, all of Manfred's known victims had the same profile. They were adult and young women, and no evidence suggested that he was interested in young boys. Furthermore, Manfred did not impulsively attack his victims in broad daylight, as happened to Tristan. He planned everything, detail by detail. He would follow his victims for days, and when he felt it was safe, he would kidnap them and hold them captive for weeks, doing the worst things the human mind can imagine. And at the time of the crime against Tristan, 1998, Manfred was already 52 years old. Witnesses said that the man who was in the tunnel was between 25 and 35 years old. Finally, a comparison was made between Manfred's fingerprint and the fingerprint found at the crime scene against Tristan, and the result was incompatible. Thus, once again, the investigations into the Tristan Brubach case returned to square one. In the following years, no new clues or evidence emerged of who was responsible for the crime, and the case remained at a standstill. The Frankfurt Public Prosecutor's Office offered a reward of €15,000 for any information that leads to the person responsible for the crime. One person added another €5,000 to the reward, making a total of €20,000. Later, another person offered a reward of €80,000 for a limited time, valid until 2016. Despite the reward of €100,000, no one came forward with information that could lead the German authorities to the person responsible for the crime. The reward of €20,000 remains today for anyone with information that helps solve the case. Tristan's father, Bernd Brubach, passed away in 2014, aged 59. He did not remarry, had no other children, and left without knowing who it was who took his only son from him. It is said that until his last moment, Bernd had hoped that the criminal would be caught and brought to justice. The case of Tristan Brubach is without a doubt one of the most shocking and mysterious cases in all of Germany. Over the past few years, the police have not obtained any new leads, and thus the case remains unsolved. Well folks, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.